was getting myself organized. Welcome back to the Homeschool Breakroom. I am Trisha, and if you are new here for the first time, every Thursday we gather 3 p.m. Eastern to chat. We talk about, I don't know, all kinds of things. Today we're going to talk about books, but we'll also talk about homeschool resources, curriculum, homeschool sales, recipes, schedules, etc. Anything that kind of goes along with mom life, and particularly homeschool mom life. But if you are not a homeschool mom, we'd still love to have you join us. Most of our things can be pretty applicable to everyone. But it's kind of just a nice way for us to hang out and take a breather from our week before our weekend. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about books for mom, and I've got a bunch of ideas. If you have a book that you've read that really good, etc., I would love for you to leave a comment, and any suggestions that are made, I will gather them up and share them in the blog post that will go along with this episode. My voice just came in. You'll have to forgive the noise. So, books. Before we get started with some book recommendations, I want to give a few resources that I use for obtaining books for free or a reduced price, besides just the library. And so I do a lot of digital books, ebooks, audiobooks, etc. So first thing I use is through my library, and it's the Overdrive or Libby app. Both of them are owned by the same company, use the same database, they're just different apps. And that's where I get a good chunk of my books. I love reading on my Kindle. I have the Kindle Paperwhite. And so if you've never read on it, it is like a regular Kindle, the e-ink as they're called, are very different than reading on a backlit device like a phone or a tablet. The pages are really, it's amazing how much it ends up feeling like paper. I'll often, I've been reading on it for 12 years, and I'll often still find myself trying to physically turn a page sometimes. But this is the way I read most of my books. I do not get many from the library for myself, mostly because I find it easier and I can have it whenever I want it. If you enjoy audiobooks, there is an app and website called LibriVox, and they offer books that are in the public domain and then they're narrated. So it's a great way to find older books, especially for kids, the classics you can find there. The third way I get most of my books is from Kindle Unlimited, which is from Amazon. And it's for ebooks and some audiobooks. With every ebook, if there's an audio version, you have the option of paying for the Audible version. What I search for are just the ones that have the Audible for free. There are not as many as the Kindle Unlimited, but there are some. And so with Kindle Unlimited, it's a monthly price, and you can have up to 10 books at a time. Checked out. So let's get started with our titles. But as you're joining us, I would love not only recommendations to read, but I would love to know what your favorite book is, or one of your favorite books ever. So if you want to leave it down in the comments, I'd love to know what other people enjoy listening to or reading. And I'd also like to know, do you do audiobooks, ebooks, print books? What's your default for books? Audiobooks is definitely right up there for me. I love audiobooks. So down in the comments, let me know how you listen or read books and your favorite title ever. So now, my list. I will have the links and titles for all of these in the description, and more than what I'm going to cover. I started listing out books, and I just kept adding to my list. I can't talk about all of them during today's live, so I'm not going to list them all, but there's more titles than what I'm going to talk about. So the first one is called Beneath a Scarlet Sky, and this originally came to Kindle first, and it is fantastic. It is a World War II book, which several of these are. That's kind of one of the big genres right now. But it's based on, it's not, it's a nonfiction story with, the novel. It's written like a novel. It is so good. First of all, it's set in Italy with World War II. Now, I don't know about you, but when I learned about World War II, most of what I read is like Europe, but not Italy. So you know about Mussolini. But beyond that, I don't know. I never really learned much about that, about Italy. So it's set in Italy, and the character is Jewish, which again, never really occurred to me that there were Jews in Italy. I don't know. I'm admitting my ignorance here. So anyway, the guy, he is an Italian Jew who turns spy against the Axis powers. And it is so good. You will binge right through the book. It is that good. Yeah, Beneath the Scarlet Sky. Next one, Devil in the White City. This one is a nonfiction book. And before I tell you the premise of it, just hear me out, because it doesn't. I was turned off listening or by the summary of it when I first read it. But it's set in right before the turn of the 20th century in Chicago, when they had the World's Fair. Was it the 1896 World's Fair? Okay, so that's the setting of it. And then it interweaves two stories. This book is by Eric Larson, and you may know he's done several books like this that are where he brings two stories, interwoven stories together. And it's the story of a person who designed or was helping to design the World's Fair, the buildings. And then the second one, and again, hear me out, is the story of the first serial killer, Holmes. I forget his first name. And I will say that by the end of the book, there are some details that I listened to it as an audiobook, and the narration on it was very just the kind of book, just the kind of narration that you would want if you were doing this kind of a book. And so I think it would be easier and to be less to read, but it's still good. I listened to it as an audiobook. It is fantastic. I didn't really know anything about this first serial killer, and it was very interesting. He was a very charming guy, and the story was so good. Again, just give it a chance. I know it sounds kind of creepy or whatever, but it was really good. It was worth reading. On a little lighter note, back to World War II, The Dressmaker's Gift. Now, this one, I have been a big fan of these books that are like told from two perspectives, like in two different time periods. And this one is set in France and then the United States. Two generations where the older one had been involved in the French resistance, which again is not something I really knew much about with World War II. So, it was, she was, the younger one is the granddaughter to the older one. And the younger one is or both of them were seamstresses, dress designers. And so it's set in the couture world of France. And it It was so good. It was a book that I just smiled. I was smiling at the end of the book. And yeah, I always like books like that. Next one is called The Gown, and this one is set in London when Queen Elizabeth's wedding. So transport yourself back there, and it tells the fictional story of one of the designers and her family and her friends, and the dressmaking room business that helped design her dress. I never really given thought to anything like that, and so it was kind of fun to listen to a story that I would never have wondered about, like who made and who designed her dress. And now it kind of makes me want to actually dig into some of that. And I just read this one. I just finished this one this summer. Again, if you were just joining us, I'd love to know two things from you: a favorite book that you've read as a child or an adult, and what format of books you like to read. Audiobooks, ebooks, Kindle, like me, or a print book. Elisa, it's like listening to a movie. Exactly. But it's not what I have to sit down and watch for 2 hours. My attention span is not always great for a movie. And so that's what I love about audiobooks. Like, I get the story and I almost feel kind of an old style radio show type of thing to it. And I can do it while I'm going to bed or getting ready in the morning or in the car, whatever. So there's that. Next one is House at the Edge of Night. This one is one of those multi-generational stories that there were several of them a couple years ago. It seemed to be popular then, but I haven't newer books since then. I haven't really noticed this. But it's set in, I forgot to look it up. Island off of Italy. I'm going to try and remember. But it's so good. It's a 4-generation story. And it's the first generation starts just after World War II when a soldier lands on the island. And it goes through, the story of this family spread over 4 generations. I'm looking at the title. Castellamere, I think is how you pronounce it. Anyway, 4 generations, and it's a small island community. And you kind of get some of the drama with small towns and the resistance as things develop and change, and technology, and that tension of things changing, and relationships, children, all of that. It's just a lovely book that, we need to think about the time span. Like I said, this one starts after World War II and then goes to modern day. And so just the amount of changes that happen in that time, and it's just a lovely book. And that's about the best word I can use to describe it. Next one is a series, and I don't know about you, but I love series books sometimes, especially when I'm feeling like I don't have a lot of brain power, because I can keep listening to books, but I don't have to learn all new characters each time. And I don't know about you, but right now, quarantine time, my brain power is slowly wasting away. I have less and less focus and such. So this one is called Maisie Dobbs. And again, it's set early, set from like just after World War One to just after World War Two. But it's not like war doesn't touches the stories, but they're not like war stories. But she is a detective, but not it's not books like murder detective stories. Nothing like that. I can't really deal with those. And there are mysteries, but the focus is really on her. And there are 16 of these, and I have listened or read to all but 2 or 3 because I can't find those through my library. I haven't broken down and purchased them yet. I keep waiting to see if my libraries get them. We'll see. I may end up buying them because I hate to not read all of them, but the books are just good. She is, for most of the series, a single lady. So there's relationship and friendship, and there's also her family relationship with her father. She was, as a young teen, she was sent to a family who lived, I don't think it was a castle, but kind of like I envisioned Downton Abbey. So maybe while she's doing it. And she's sent there, I think she was 13 or 14, to work, but so she could also, because her mother had died, and so her father was trying to raise her, and so he sends her there. And while she's there, she makes friends with a family member of the house who ends up paying for her education and trains her to be a detective. And so each story revolves around that, and they're just enjoyable books. They're not high drama. They're not. They're easy to pick up and put down if you don't. There are some books that if you wait a day or two between reading them, you're like, I don't even remember what happened, and there's so many details. This isn't like that. They're just enjoyable, easy books. And again, I like them because I like series sometimes so that I don't have to keep learning new characters. Sarah's Key. I have not read this book. Historical fiction. When is it set? Can you yeah, I'd like to know about it. Historical fiction are definitely my favorite kind of books to read. Now, next one, let's move to more modern day times, and this one is called The Overdue Life of Amy Byler. Several of these books that I mentioned, and then will be down in the description, are Kindle Unlimited books, and this is one of them. And again, the Kindle Unlimited books you can have out up to 10 at a time. So a lot of years I just do this during the summer when I have a little more time for reading. But you can do you can buy you can do it monthly or buy like a 3-month plan, a 6-month plan, year plan. And they always go on sale around Black Friday for like 50% off. So, and then you could buy it for yourself and redeem it whenever you want. So anyway, Overdue Life of Amy Byler. This one really, I enjoyed it. I think in part because I read it last fall when the new school year started and I was feeling overwhelmed with everything. So in the book, single mom to 2 kids, and her ex-husband finally comes back into her life and takes the kids for a time, and she doesn't know what to do with herself, which I cannot imagine what I would do with myself either if I had, time when just a chunk of time all to myself. So she's got a friend in New York City. She goes up there, she meets someone. It's just like a fun book. She kind of explores who she is, falls in love, all of this stuff. It's just a fun book. yeah, it was just a fun book. And next one, again, another modern one before we switch back to World War II. Next one's called When We Believed in Mermaids. And this one is a pair of sisters. And I don't want to, this one I have to be careful to not give away too much. But one of them goes missing and is presumed to be dead. And the other one decides it's time to go searching for her to see if she's really dead or not. And story about heartbreak and sisterhood and families and second chances, and it's set against a backdrop that these two girls had a pretty dysfunctional childhood, and second chances and what our childhood, the scars from our childhood, and it's good. It's a really, really good book. It was another one that I kind of plunged into and quickly read. Let me look at my list. Last Train to Istanbul. Again, showing my ignorance here. So far we've covered French resistance that I didn't know much about, and Italy in World War II. Next up, we're going to talk about head over to Turkey. And so this one, the author of this one, let me look up the name again before, so I can make sure I get it correct, is Eyes Coolen. I will let me type it in here. I think I forgot, I've made all these banners with the titles. So the name is Ayse and then Kulan, Kulan. She, honestly, I'm not sure, has written several books, and they're all available on Kindle Unlimited, that have been fantastic. There's one called The Rose of Sarajevo, just set during that civil war, Serbian civil war in the 90s. There are several, and so they're really good. But this one is, I didn't really know much. I never really given much thought about the Middle East in World War II. So it's set in there originally. Daughter of a pasha moves to France, gets married, and then has to get home when the war begins. It was really good, and I really enjoyed being introduced to an author that I would never have thought about. I'm not always great about looking for diversity in my books, authors. And so I was really glad to have stumbled upon this book in Kindle Unlimited, and then the other ones. So there's a lot of historical accuracy and details that are interwoven into the books. Yeah, just a really good one. Okie dokie. Of Windmills and War. If you saw it on my Facebook, this is the one I posted about over there. This one it's a trilogy, and the first book is focused on the Netherlands and its involvement in World War II. And then in the second one, the main character from the first one, at the end of that one, well, I can't say much without giving away, but it's a continuation of her and the relationships and friendships that she develops. And then the third one, of course, would be a further development of it. And they're just, again, pretty easy books. The first one, there was some heaviness in it. She was involved with the Dutch resistance, but not terribly so, and definitely not in the detailed way that Devil in the White City was. But yeah, it's just, the third one I felt was a little bit underdeveloped, I guess maybe is the right word. I didn't love it as much as I enjoyed the first two books, even though I really wanted to love the third one too, but they were all really good books. Let me double check my list here. That is everything. I just checked out The Last Bathing Beauty, which is set in 19 with, well, it's again, I think it's set in two different time periods, but the first part of it is set in 1951 in the Catskill Mountains, at a resort there. I'm kind of picturing like in Dirty Dancing. I don't know, that's kind of my frame of reference for everything about the Catskills and resorts in the 40s 50s time period. But anyway, that was set in there, and I just started listening to it a couple hours ago. It's another Kindle Unlimited book, and that one had free Audible book for it. So those are some recommendations for you, 10 of them. And again, in the description, there will be additional ones. So if you're looking for some new titles, check out the list. They are affiliate links, so if you click on them, I do get if you purchase through the link, any of the links, I do get a small commission, and I appreciate the support. If you have any other titles you'd like to share, I'd love to know what you are reading this summer or a favorite book, and I will see you next week. Thanks for joining me.